Hey y'all, it's Jen and Anthony from the Oysters Kitchen.
Today we're going to be making a traditional New Orleans king cake.
Today my mommy and papi are making king cake and it's real big.
For our king cake dough, we're going to need 3.5 cups of flour, 1 package of quick rise yeast, that's about 2¼ teaspoons, 1 cup of milk, 1/4 cup of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, 2 eggs, and 6 tablespoons of butter, room temperature and cubed. For our filling, we'll need 2/3 cup of firmly packed light brown sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, and 4 tablespoons of butter, softened and cubed. Finally, for our icing, we'll need 1 cup of powdered sugar, 1/4 block of cream cheese softened, 1 tablespoon of milk, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, just a drop or 2 of lemon extract. I know this sounds bougie, but I've eaten a lot of king cake in my life, and I'm pretty certain this is what most of the bakeries in New Orleans are doing. And then finally, your green, purple, and yellow sprinkles to top everything off. We're going to get started by combining about 2.5 cups of your flour using the dough hook on your mixer with your yeast. What this is going to do is incorporate the yeast firmly throughout your flour mixture and make sure that everything gets spread evenly before we add the milk, sugar, and salt mixture. Just give it a spin on low for a couple of seconds to make sure everything is incorporated. Next, we're going to combine our milk, sugar, and salt in a small saucepan over medium heat. Don't let the milk get too hot. We're aiming for a temperature between 120 and 130 degrees total. To incorporate the milk mixture with our flour mixture, go ahead and switch to the paddle attachment and then check the temperature on your milk. Again, it should be somewhere between 120 and 130 degrees to make sure that we're not going to burn off and kill that yeast. Slowly pour the milk into the flour and let it incorporate. It should form a very loose, shaggy dough. Crack 2 eggs into your dough and then slowly incorporate the softened cubed butter into your mixture and bring everything up to speed. You may need to stop a couple of times and use your spatula to scrape the dough off of the side, then switch over to the dough hook and begin incorporating the rest of your flour on low speed. The goal here is to make sure that the dough comes together and starts to pull away from the side without adding in too much flour. The more flour you add, the thicker and harder your king cake will be later. Allow your dough to knead for about 5 to 8 minutes until it's nice and firm and you can handle it easy with your hands. Spray your mixing bowl down with some cooking spray, then place the dough ball back in, cover it with plastic wrap, and allow it to sit in your refrigerator to rise for about 45 to 60 minutes. As with all dough products, the goal here is that we're going to want our dough to have roughly doubled in size by the time the rise is complete. To make our filling, we're going to go ahead and combine our brown sugar, our room temperature butter, and our cinnamon, and mix it together to form a loose paste. You may need to use 2 spatulas because this does get rather sticky, and as the butter comes down to room temperature, this is going to become easier to do. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Go ahead and line your counter with 1 to 2 pieces of wax paper. I like to use 2, and then cover the wax paper in flour. When you're ready, remove the dough ball from your refrigerator and place it on the floured wax paper. Knead it out by hand at first, and then pull out your roller and try to roll this into a rectangular shape, roughly 20 inches by 15 to 12 inches. This isn't always possible, and so just get it as close to a rectangular shape as possible. It will make the kneading process and the braiding process much easier as we go on. Ultimately, we want to make sure that we can lift this piece of dough off of the wax paper easily without it sticking. Next, we'll go ahead and take our cinnamon, sugar, and butter mixture and pour that over half of the rectangular shape of dough. We're going to spread that out with our spatula and then fold the piece of dough over halfway, trying to seal in as much of the butter and sugar as possible, but I'll let you know some of it is going to come out. This next step gets kind of messy, which is why we've got the wax paper down, but go ahead and try to keep as much of the cinnamon sugar inside of the dough as possible, pressing down, trying to seal at the edges where you can, but don't fight it. There's going to be some that comes out. I can lift up this piece of dough and then transfer it to the other sheet of wax paper, giving me a somewhat clean surface to go ahead and cut the king cake and braid it into the shape that I'm going to want. And just like that, I can go ahead and remove the messier part of the wax paper and give myself a clean work surface. I'm then going to pull out my trusty pizza cutter and make 3 large cuts through this shape of king cake. Now, because it's not a perfect rectangle, I'm actually going to use that to my advantage, and there's going to be a small flap down at the bottom. I'm actually going to use that to go ahead and tie everything together once I make my final shape. Stretch out each strand of king cake as much as you can. It's going to help with the braiding process, but don't pull so hard that you tear the dough. At this stage of the game, it's going to be a lot harder to fix if you've got a tear or a rip in the dough. So stretch it out as far as you can. We want as much as we can work with, but just use your best judgment. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I actually didn't cut all the way through the dough. I left one end connected. That's going to make the braiding process and connecting the king cake a lot easier as we move forward. And I'm going to move that 4th piece just out of the way. And if you grew up with sisters or cousins, the braiding process is we're going to move just one piece into the center, move the side over it, rinse, lather, and repeat to create a loose braid throughout the entire piece of dough, again with that one flap hanging off. I then transferred my dough over to a greased baking sheet, using the loose end to tie into the rest of the braid, creating a round, oval, circular shape. Once you get everything tied together, it is going to be a little bit messy, but we're going to go ahead and try to stretch this out as much as we can. Again, be really gentle with it, but the further we can stretch it out, the larger your king cake is going to appear. Your guests are going to love it, but don't overdo it. We really don't want it to tear. If part of it looks kind of ugly, that's actually okay. You're never going to know once you put icing and sprinkles all over it. With your oven preheated, go ahead and bake your king cake dough for 20 to 30 minutes, checking every 10 minutes just to make sure that it's not burning. While we're waiting on the dough to cook, go ahead and place your cream cheese into the mixing bowl, and using a toothpick, take just a drop or 2 of lemon extract, poking it into the cream cheese. Again, I know this seems like an extra step and you really can't omit it, but I believe this is what's going on in the New Orleans bakeries. Whip your cream cheese for a few minutes, then slowly add the milk and vanilla extract, forming a loose paste. When you're ready, you can then start pouring in your powdered sugar slowly, then increase the speed on your mixer to bring the frosting together. As with our dough, you're probably going to want to go ahead and use your spatula to scrape the sides and make sure that all of the powdered sugar is firmly incorporated into the icing, then bring the mixer back up to speed. My king cake has been baking for about 20 minutes, so I want to check on it, and as expected, I think I'm going to go ahead and let it go for the full 30 minutes. And while this next step is optional, it really isn't a king cake without Mardi Gras beads and a king cake baby. The baby itself is meant to symbolize baby Jesus and is hidden inside of the king cake. Don't drop the baby like I just did. But the baby is meant to be hidden inside of the king cake, and whoever finds the baby has to supply the next king cake. So it's a really cool tradition, and if you don't have one, a bead, a coin, a jewel would be just as fine. Just make sure to tell your guests ahead of time so nobody chokes on it when they're enjoying their king cake. Our king cake's been baking for about half an hour, so we're going to go ahead and pull it out of the oven and let it cool down for about 15 to 20 minutes before icing it so our icing doesn't melt. Once it's cool enough, go ahead and layer your icing on over the top of your king cake. Pay attention to some of the spots that maybe don't look quite so nice. Again, this is where we're going to really get to cover up those imperfections. Spread the icing all over, get it good and thick everywhere that you can, and then once you're ready, go ahead and hide the king cake baby somewhere. You'll know, but your guests never will. And finally, we're going to go ahead and top the king cake with our sprinkles. Now, it's very important that you go in this order: purple, green, and gold. It's not Mardi Gras. if you go in any other order or if you use any other colors. Now, I will make one small exception, which is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They've really embraced the color pink for Mardi Gras, and so we'll occasionally use pink sprinkles. And just to celebrate, while we're decorating our king cake with our Mardi Gras beads, I always like to throw in a couple of pink beads for our Spanish Town Mardi Gras parade in honor of my new home, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Whether this is your first king cake or you're a king cake veteran, I really hope that you like this recipe, because while king cakes are a dime a dozen here in Louisiana, sometimes it's the middle of June and you just want a king cake, or maybe you're in another part of the country and you just can't get your hands on one easily. As always, if you like our videos, please like and subscribe. This is Anthony with the Oster's Kitchen signing off until next time.